How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella, joined by Zach Gilbert. We are your Kansas City Chiefs on SI beat writers as we once again join you today on the podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs as we get closer to the regular season. I know I'm excited. I'm assuming, Zach, you've got to be excited, especially knowing that you're in town covering
Let's get this show on the road. Yeah,
exactly. So today we're going to be talking about and diving into kind of the two biggest things of optimism and concern in our eyes going into week one against the Los Angeles Chargers. As you know, they will be playing in Sao Paulo, Brazil, an AFC West division rival who has been predicted several times this offseason to overtake the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC West division, hence making their dynasty once again start falling down the mountain from what we saw last year in the Super Bowl. But without further ado, let's break down our first two reasons for optimism why the Kansas City Chiefs should feel optimistic going into their game against the Chargers. Zach, would you like to start, or would you like me to go first?
Yeah, I can start. Dom, I think the biggest reason for optimism for me is the team's wide receivers, and that's important because we have the NFL suspended Rasheed Rice for the first 6 games. I think that's a positive, actually, not the fact that he got suspended, but the timing of the suspension, that it happens at the beginning of the season rather than during the regular season, or even worse yet, later in the season. So I think getting those out of the way is really important. I think it's a big difference this year without Rasheed Rice compared to last year without Rasheed Rice. You'll remember in the game actually against the Chargers at SoFi Stadium last year in Week 4, Rasheed was leading the league in both yards and receptions at the time. Ironically, Patrick Mahomes accidentally crashed into his knee and trying to make a tackle on the interception by Christian Fulton, who in a roundabout sort of way wound up signing as an unrestricted free agent with the Chiefs this offseason, and could even start this game against his former team in Brazil. Getting back to the wide receivers, the emergence of Tyquan Thornton and Rasheed Rice's suspension allowed them to keep Jason Brownlee in addition to rejuvenated Travis Kelce. I think the wide receivers are going to be much different this year. In fact, Xavier Worthy said this week that he thinks that any of those players in that wide receiver room can hit the deep ball. We saw Tyquan Thornton catch a 58-yard bomb from Patrick Mahomes, and it was all air yards. I mean, there was no yards after the catch. It was a perfect timing on that play, and I'm just really looking forward to see what the wide receivers can do without Rasheed Rice and starting Week 1 in Brazil with the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm looking really forward to that as well. I touched on the podcast episode yesterday, kind of what I'm looking for out of the wide receivers in stepping up while Rasheed Rice is on the sideline, so to say. But I also think a reason for optimism that you touched on, the guy who is throwing to the wide receivers and Patrick Mahomes. I know it is broad, but Patrick Mahomes has had a terrific track record in week ones since becoming the starting quarterback. In fact, against the Los Angeles Chargers, he has played in several games since 2018. He averages around 272 and a half receiving or passing yards per game. He as well as gets close to just over 2 touchdowns, and he rarely throws interceptions against the Chargers. It's almost like when the lights are the brightest, whether it be in week 1 or a meaningless week 18 that we saw last season, if it's against the AFC West division, Patrick Mahomes is going to step up and make sure that he gets his best foot forward, ensuring that the Chiefs can walk away with a victory and also kind of have that dominance over their AFC West rivals. I do think that if Patrick Mahomes is able to have a good game, close to 2, maybe 3 touchdown passes, it could be a very impactful statement to begin the season for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, there are some things that have some concern going into the game, and I think both of ours concerns kind of go hand in hand together. So why don't you get started with your concern for the Chargers game?
Yeah, Dom, I think one of the things that I think the Chiefs should be losing a few hours of sleep every night over until they can prove otherwise is their run defense. I think looking back on the three preseason games, granted at Seattle in week 2 of that preseason a couple of weeks ago, Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie did not play. They were held out. Coach's decision. But man, the Seattle Seahawks just ran right through the heart of their defense, and just goes to show you there's not much depth there. So if anything happens to Chris Jones or Nick Bolton, right up the center there, that's got to be a concern. The Chiefs did make a handful of moves, especially in the run-stopping category. This past week, they released veteran Mike Pennell. Pennell was a surprise. It was actually the biggest surprise of all the Chiefs roster moves on the final roster reduction on Tuesday. And 2 days before that, they had reacquired Derek Noddy from the New York Jets. And, of course, Noddy spent his first 7 seasons with the Chiefs. Brett Veach spoke to the beat writers here in Kansas City yesterday morning, on Thursday morning, and he said that really the reason that they made that switch between Derek Noddy and Mike Pennell was 2 factors. One was age. Ironically, I looked this up. Mike Pennell and Derek Noddy were born on the same day. They have the same birthday, but Pennell is 5 years older, exactly 5 years older. And the other thing that Brett Veach mentioned was that Derek Noddy hardly ever misses a game. If you look back at his track record, I think he's missed only 2 games in his entire career. So he's always available. He's a good guy that can stick up there, and Steve Spagnuolo can stick right through the heart of the offense on early downs and kind of occupy some blockers, free up those linebackers to kind of attack that run defense. But man, in Seattle, I think they gave up like 268 rushing yards, and they had like five runs. I'm sorry, 5 runs of 15 yards or more, and that they just gashed them over and over, and that can't happen. And I'm sure the Chargers, they've got Omari and Hampton, and that's their first round rookie, and then they also signed in free agency Najee Harris. And Harris had that issue where he injured his eye in an accident on the 4th of July with fireworks. But he looks ready to come back. So they've got 2 pretty solid running backs there. And I'm sure their mouth is watering a little bit at that Chiefs run defense.
Yeah, I really hope that for the sake of the defense, if it's going to be anything that we saw last season with how the Chiefs held on to a lot of one-score games, it could be the run defense or the lack thereof that kind of hinders them, especially against the Chargers. You got to know that they're taking notes. They've been paying attention to everything that the Chiefs have done this offseason. Similarly to yours, I have a concern just on the offensive side of the run game. I touched on this earlier in the week, talking about the running back room. As we know, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, they're all in kind of 1 year they've got like 1 year left on their contracts, essentially, for Isaiah Pacheco, him being in the final year of his rookie contract, that all of them are going to be or must go into the season, not even just the Chargers game, with the mentality of, I have to perform in order for me to get a job either with Kansas City next year or down the line. I do think, though, I was touching on this recently, that of the offense of game plan, you've got the offensive line that was the biggest concern, but going into this season, following the preseason, I think that if the run game isn't there, it's going to kind of hinder the Kansas City Chiefs, especially since it's widely known that they're going to be looking to try and get the deep ball more often. So you've got to sprinkle in some running attacks in there. And if there's not success in that area, I do think that it could be very problematic for the Chiefs going into or throughout the entirety of the season. Hopefully, Isaiah Pacheco is able to bounce back. Hopefully, we see a lot from Brashard Smith, whether he does get some carries or he is used on special teams. But I do think those are our two reasons for optimism and reasons for concern going into the first week for the Kansas City Chiefs. As always, you should follow us over on X. You can follow me at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day. You can also follow Zach at Zach S. Gilbert on X. He does a terrific job keeping everything up to date for the Kansas City Chiefs and making sure that we are publicizing our stories. You should also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI, where we post and repost every single day. Exclusively free content. Zach, thank you once again for joining, and I'm excited to see you next week to cover up some more things ahead of the regular season.
Yeah, good to be with you, Dom. Hope everybody has a great weekend.
Awesome. All right. As always, Chiefs Kingdom, be kind to one another, and I'll see you tomorrow.